Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Open Table with Tito. I'm excited to welcome you today to another amazing episode. And I have a very wonderful guest with me here today. His name is Dr. Arkady Kagan. How you doing, sir?
Hi,
Yeah,
pleasure. Yeah, I'm doing great. Thank you.
Thank you for, being on the Open Table podcast. I know you're a very busy person and coming here and, having this session with me, it's really, really a great privilege.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you so much. So, I'd like to introduce you to my audience and I want you to tell us a brief about yourself, what you do and how you got into what you do and what life looks for you.
So my story begins back in Ukraine. I was 10 years old when Ukraine was still part of the Soviet Union. In 1975, with my family, we came to the United States. We settled in Ohio. I was 10 years old at that time. My dad was an engineer, a robotics engineer. My mom was a doctor. And we came to America with a couple $100s in our pocket. Kind of the typical story of the immigration from a very repressive country. And we really, neither my mom or dad knew English, nor did I. We just came to a new country in hopes of finding our future. After I finished my high school education in Toledo, Ohio, I came to Washington University in St. Louis, which gave me an amazing education. And I'm grateful for where I am because of that school. I made lots of great friends. I got an amazing education there, as you know. Great place. And then I was fortunate enough to get accepted to medical school. I went to Ohio State med school. Go Buckeyes. This year is going to be a great year for them, I think. And then, we beat Michigan, which was a huge game just last Saturday. And then I was fortunate enough to get accepted to a ophthalmology residency program also at Ohio State. And completed my education there in eye surgery and medicine. I then decided to come join my parents. They had moved to Los Angeles and I had decided to come to Los Angeles to start my practice. And I started my private practice way back when in 1996, and I've been practicing eye surgery now for almost 30 years. So that's kind of been my path along the way.
Oh, wow. That's a great story, an interesting story. One thing that fascinates me is, I think and correct me if I'm wrong, like you run two separate eye centers yourself. How do you manage that?
Right. So Los Angeles, where I'm practicing, where I live, is a huge town, and I do have an office in Los Angeles itself, kind of in the middle of the city. And then I opened another office about 10 years ago in a place where they call the Valley, which is in the San Fernando Valley, for many different reasons, and I saw a nice opportunity there. And yes, it's challenging to run two offices. I'm the only doctor there that runs the practice. So part of the week I'm in my city office, and part of the week I'm at the Encino or the Valley office. My staff travels with me, and I service the patients from locations because my patients tend to be on the older side. They have a hard time driving to me. Los Angeles is such a huge town, and they have a difficulty getting to me. So I decided to go to them instead of them coming to me.
Yeah, you have a great story, and I think something similar to me is like your parents immigrated from Ukraine,
Right.
And you had your undergrad here, went to med school. How was the journey for you? And being a child of an immigrant, and also now going to med school and now having your own practice here. What does that journey look like?
Yeah, so it's a very challenging journey because medical school for anyone is challenging. It's not a simple process. It's a big journey. Medical education in this country is rigorous, so it was difficult. But I had, fortunately, incredible family support. My mom and dad were very supportive. I come from a family of doctors, so my grandfather was a physician. My mom was a doctor. I became a physician. So the support was invaluable. I had that all throughout the process. And you need that to make it, because it's very rigorous. And the other thing that truly, I believe, helped me during difficult times was I was an athlete all my life, and the discipline from sports was invaluable for me to complete the rigorous training in med school, as well as internship and residency.
Yeah. So you were an athlete. Like what sport did you play?
Yeah, so I was, when I grew up back in Ukraine, or former Soviet Union back then, from the day I could walk, I was playing soccer every single day. So soccer was the game. And when I came to the United States, soccer was not that popular, and so they thought I was supposed to be some kind of a superstar, because I would literally take the ball, dribble around everybody, and score a goal every single time. Because I had skills at 10 years of age that most kids don't have here, because it wasn't that popular a game. Yeah. And I became, a very, very good soccer player in high school as well. And then I grew and started playing basketball around 11, 12 years old. That was another passion of mine. I also did track and field in high school. So I did lots of sports, and that was, the discipline from sport helped me get through the academic rigor of studying, as well as some of the difficult physical challenges in becoming a physician and surgeon.
Yeah, beautiful. Now let's digress a little bit and talk about some of the things we've spoken of off camera, which is investing, finance, which is a huge aspect of life, and so many of my audience would really resonate with that, because that's something they are trying to figure out. Now, can you tell me a little bit about your investing journey, how you started, what you did, and why you prepared so much for it?
Yeah, sure. So, as I mentioned earlier, my family and we came with a couple $100 in our pocket. We were not wealthy by any means when we came here. My parents worked really hard. I watched them struggle to get jobs, work for $3.50. My father, when he started working for $3.50 as an engineer back then in the 70s and 80s. And so I didn't grow up in a wealthy household. I always grew up with, we weren't poor, but we didn't have a lot of things that many people in this country enjoy. So for me, I always saw our family kind of struggle. So for me, I wanted to make sure that that financially I was able to set up my life in a way that I didn't have to struggle and my kids didn't have to struggle. I realized at the time that I started my practice, when I was about 30 years old, I realized that there's only so many hours in the day that you can actually earn money. Another option would be to actually start investing in American companies and international companies to make money. But I didn't have the financial education. I didn't get a master's in business administration. I didn't have formal financial training. So what is a person to do? So I just started reading a lot. I started talking to people. I started doing some of my own research, and basically educated myself on how to invest, because my father didn't know. He didn't grow up here. He didn't know how to invest. So I started from scratch. And my first investment was really a year or two after I started my practice, because when I started my practice, I had no money either, because I invested all the money that I had into building up my practice. In ophthalmology, it takes a lot of money to start, because the equipment is very expensive. Yeah. So my first investment was, I believe, a couple $100, and it was into a mutual fund. It was into a classic vehicle that is so available to so many people to invest in, and that was my first investment, $200. That was it.
Wow. Now, that is very important. You spoke about just investing $200 in mutual funds. Now, I want to ask you a question about how important financial education is. Most people watching this don't really know a lot about. They don't even know about stocks. Right. Now, so how was financial education important so much in that journey? And what classes did you take? Did you learn something before you took that step?
So My education mostly was focused on STEM. It was all about science, chemistry, calculus, physics. Medical school was all about anatomy and physiology and biochemistry. I had minimal to no financial education whatsoever in formal training, in formal school. Fortunately, we live in a period and a time in a country where financial information and knowledge is abundant. It's everywhere. You can get it now on the internet. You can buy a book. You can watch YouTube videos. You can do a lot of stuff, but you have to have the interest in it. Yeah. A lot of people are scared of it. They don't understand it. I was scared of it as well, and I didn't understand it because it's overwhelming. There's 2,000 mutual funds. There's 5,000 stocks. Where do you start? What do you pick? It becomes overwhelming. The most important thing that I realized through this journey is that keep it simple. Make it as simple as possible and get started as early as possible. Don't overcomplicate it, and you're going to be just fine. There's other corollaries to that. There's other lessons to that, but those three things are so critical because I initially, like most of us, was overwhelmed, completely overwhelmed by the process. What do you pick? How do you pick? When do you pick? What do you do? And as I began investing, I realized that it's not so important of what you pick, but to get started early. And it doesn't matter how much you invest, as long as you invest. Even $1, $5, $10. That's the key. Start early, invest every penny you can, and you're going to be great. You're going to do great.
So, picking up of that, you said start early, like invest early. Now, someone who has zero knowledge of, what they want to invest in, and they just have $100. In the present economy today, the stock market today, what would you advise in your own, in your own way, what would you advise someone putting that $100 into?
So that's a great question, and it's hard to answer that with just one answer. I'll try to answer it as best I can. A lot, like if I had $100 today and somebody said, "Here's $100, invest it in the best place that you can." The first thing you have to ask yourself is this money you're not going to need for 20, 30 years? Or is this money you're going to need tomorrow? Or is this money you're going to need 10 years from now? So you need to figure out your time horizon. That's very important. How much money do you need tomorrow, a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? It's a hard question for some people to answer. And also a lot of it depends on your age. For example, a 19-year-old with $100 can be a lot more aggressive with picking stocks than somebody who's 75 years old, who's almost ready to retire, or 65-year-old who's getting ready to retire. My son, who's 19 years old, and who started his investing journey with my help, and we're doing it together now, he and I decided that his investment portfolio should be pretty aggressive, and it should be mostly in stocks. Somebody who is getting close to retiring, their portfolio needs to be a little bit more conservative, less stocks, a little bit more cash, a little bit more bonds. Because stocks, in the short term, fluctuate a lot. Yeah. In the long term, that fluctuation doesn't matter because you have time on your side. Cash and bonds don't fluctuate a lot, but they also don't give you a lot of return. So there's that risk-return benefit. Yeah. We can talk lots and lots about that. But a lot depends on your time horizon, your age, and also there's one other factor that's very important. What is your own personal tolerance for risk? What is your personal tolerance of when the market goes down 10, 15%? Are you going to panic and sell? Or are you going to ride the wave and ride it out and wait for the next growth cycle? This is very important as well.
I think amazing answers. You spoke about keeping it simple, and how you started your portfolio for your son, and I think that's a great way. But one question I have is the stock market also prefers opportunity for people to day trade, like to trade daily. Yeah. and also provides opportunity for people to invest in the long term. What's your strategy, and what do you think is the best way
Sure,
to approach
it's
it?
a great question because there's a lot of people out there trying to make money day trading. I personally have not used a day trading strategy whatsoever. And in fact, research, there's been significant research that has shown that day trading just doesn't pay. Day traders usually, if they're lucky, they'll break even. It's very hard to make money in the stock market, day trading. That's not the way to real wealth. The way to real wealth, and this has been shown over and over and over again by many people much smarter than me, who are doing it and are living examples of it, by buying and waiting, buying and letting the market do what it's going to do.
Okay.
Because historically, the United States market, which is the best market in the world, we live in a country that gives people the opportunity and the chance to become millionaires.
Yeah.
Almost everyone can become that in this country if they invest properly, but they don't, and they don't because of one word, discipline. They just don't have the discipline to do it. But the long-term game is much, much better than the short-term day trading. I don't know anyone who's made money in day trading, but buy and hold and continue to add to your portfolio as your means allow you to, gives you the biggest chance and the biggest opportunity to become quite wealthy in this country. Because historically the market has produced 8 to 10% return per year. Compounded over the years becomes huge. And we can talk more about that, about compounding, which is the most incredible force in the universe. I think it was Einstein that said that it's the eighth wonder of the world.
Yeah.
It truly is. I'm noticing it in my portfolio now, what compounding can do. But in order to take advantage of compounding, you got to stay in the market for at least 30 years. 30 years is the magic number that gives you the chance to see incredible growth. Not linear growth. After 30 years, it becomes vertical. And once you see that inflection point, you go, wow, I can't believe it. It's happening. And it's happening vertically. That's what happens with compounding. But you got to stay in the market. Who was it that said, I think it was Warren Buffett, who's my biggest hero as an investor. I study him and I read about him all the time. He said, it's not about timing the market, but it's about time in the market.
Yeah.
That's the key.
Yeah. Yeah. You said something, and most people here don't probably have seen this word before, but they don't know how it works, right? And I want you to explain it in the most simplest language ever. It's compounding, actually, like you spoke about, right? So what does it mean to you, and how can someone, like take advantage of it?
So compounding is, it's a mathematical formula, which we're going to keep it simple. We're not going to go there.
Yeah.
We're going to keep it really easy, like fifth grader kind of stuff. We can make it as simple as a fifth grader to understand. But imagine, since I'm a scientist and a physician, my background is in medicine and science, I'm going to do a very simple math analogy of compounding. This is how biology works, and this is how microorganisms and bacteria and fungus replicate. They replicate by compounding. They don't replicate linearly, they replicate compounding. What happens is you have two bacteria. That two bacteria becomes 4, the 4 becomes 8, the 8 becomes 16, 16 becomes 64, 64 becomes 128, 128 becomes 256, 256 becomes 512, 512 becomes 1014, and it just goes crazy after that. That's compounding. It is the most powerful force of duplication and replication, and this is exactly how investing works, because what happens is the interest and the dividends that you receive from a company, let's pick one that's familiar to everybody, it's in the news all the time, Google or NVIDIA, pick one of those huge companies. They give dividends, they have growth, and imagine if you get interest, that's all actually making you interest as well. So it's interest on top of interest. This is how American banks become wealthy. They get interest on top of interest from people. That's compounding. It is logarithmic growth, not linear growth. Linear growth is very slow, but logarithmic growth goes like this, linear, and then eventually goes vertical. It's very hard to understand unless you actually sit down with a piece of paper and do the math. And the math is actually quite easy. The math with compounding is quite simple. It's called the rule of 72. You take 72 and you divide it by the interest that you're receiving on your money. Call it 10% for easy math. We all can understand that. We divide 72 by 10, that's 7.2. That's the amount of time that it takes for your money to double. So if you are getting 10% interest from NVIDIA or from Google or from S&P 500, which is the index that everybody knows about, S&P 500, your $10,000 invested 10 years ago would now theoretically be worth, 7 years later, would be worth 20,000. That 20,000, if you stick it and keep it in the market and not day trade, stay in the market, gives you another 10%. The next 10 years, now you're gonna have $40,000. 10 years later, you're gonna have $80,000. And it just keeps on going. So once you look at the math and once you see what happens with compounding, you realize what we just discussed earlier in this podcast, and that is the earlier you start, the more time your money has to grow, the bigger that money will be at the end of your journey.
Wow, that's powerful.
Simple. It's compound.
That's powerful. Now, I want to ask you, something about the people who didn't start early, who started probably at age 30. I tell people when you're 30, you're already late.
You're way late. I started at 30, but I had nothing. I was in school. My parents didn't have much. I had no money to start. So I started at 30.
Yeah.
But even at that time, I made up a lot of time because I was consistent every year in investing. And so my portfolio has grown. And now I'm watching the fruits of my labor because, as we mentioned earlier, I'm at that inflection point. I'm at that 30-year period when the portfolio goes vertical.
Yeah.
So the people who start late can still do it. They just need to be more disciplined and try to invest more than if they started. Because here's the thing, investing $10 at 10 years old is very different than investing $10 at 50 years old. You just don't have that time to compound.
Yeah. So if you advise someone who is actually saving for retirement and trying to put this money into the market and the way you've been doing it, what asset would you advise someone to invest in? Would you say even if they put it in a Roth IRA, they still need to invest it, right? Of course. So
Roth IRA or a SEP IRA or a regular IRA, they're just vehicles, vehicles for an investment, and they have their own specific tax consequences. That's for another podcast. We can talk about that. But those are vehicles, and a brokerage account, which is just your own personal savings. Since we mentioned that, the worst place you can put your money is into a bank savings account, and because banks give you almost no interest return.
yeah.
That's the worst place. I keep very little money in my bank. All my money is invested, either in a money market or a bond or stocks or other vehicles. But I keep only enough money in the bank to pay my bills, to pay for my lighting, my gas, my mortgage. That's it. Yeah.
So someone who is like 35, 40, saving for retirement, what asset would you advise them to put the money into? Would you say an S&P 500? Would you say what index one?
So I'm gonna go back to my hero and the person who I've been studying and reading a lot about, Warren Buffett, who, without argument, probably is one of the greatest investors of all time. He started with very little and built a company into almost $1 trillion company. That's a lot of zeros. I don't think we can comprehend how much that is. But for him, I think it was more like a sport at some point of making that kind of money. He didn't need that money. He still lives in a tiny home in Oklahoma and drives an old car. So, but he says that if you invest your money into the S&P 500, which is the Standard & Poor's 500 of the largest companies that are in the index of the stock market, that's the index that has the 500 of the largest and most profitable companies in the United States, you will do amazing. And that is probably for a beginning investor, the S&P 500 is probably the best place to start. There's other options and other places to put your money in the stock market as well, but S&P is probably the very, very first place I would start. If you gave me $100, that's where I would put my money, and keep putting as much as I can every month, every year into that. And then as you become much more advanced, much more savvy in what you're doing, you can start branching out into other vehicles of the stock market. Again, probably for another podcast, but that's probably where I would do it. And in fact, Warren Buffett says that all of his inheritance that he's going to leave to his family, which is I think in the billions, not millions, billions with a B, is going to be in one fund, the S&P 500.
Wow.
That's powerful. Why? Because the market's already done your research for you. It's taken 500 companies, the most profitable companies that run the United States economy, and invest in. You own a little bit of each of those companies. You own a little bit of Google. You own a little bit of Alphabet. You own a little bit of NVIDIA. You own a little bit of Amazon. You own American Express. You own FedEx. You own all these companies that we've heard about, that we know. They're all profiting, and you're profiting from their work and their growth in the S&P 500. One fund. And you can actually invest $100 and own all 500 companies through an ETF called an exchange-traded fund that has no minimum investments. You can literally put $100 into an ETF that's also liquid, that you can actually sell and trade, and that costs very little. And that's also a huge issue. We can also talk about that at probably another podcast, about cost of investing. But that's where I would start most likely.
Yeah. So, one of, like, especially for people who live here, one of the biggest issue is how to now leave the market when it's that time. One very huge strategy is, I tell people, is that most people ask is that, when do I now leave? What's the strategy to exit?
Yeah. And that's a phenomenal question. It's one thing to buy stocks and mutual funds. It's another thing to know when to exit and when to leave the market and when to rebalance what financial people call rebalancing your portfolio, if you would, right? Rebalancing. And this is something that I think we should all understand. The biggest pros from Harvard and MIT and Wharton and all these financial institutions that all they do is train, and they have all these fancy schmancy analytic tools and computers on every side of their face. They have the same difficulty as a common person like myself would know when to actually exit. Why is that? The reason for that is that absolutely no one, not even Warren Buffett, not the smartest person on earth, can predict when the market is going to crash 5, 10, 15, 20, 30%. Nobody knows. People do not know. The smartest people in the world don't know. Warren Buffett doesn't know. And the reason for that is because there are so many variables in the market. Mr. Market, as they call it, acts what it acts and how it does. Nobody can predict it because there's just too many variables in that equation. Too many people trading, too much going on to know when that correction is going to happen. So when to leave is very difficult, but I have myself developed some algorithms in my mind of when I actually want to pull some of my money out and when it's time. It's a very complex answer, and I probably didn't answer that correctly, but suffice it to say that it's an extremely difficult thing to know when to do it. The simple response, the simple answer is to set up and know when and how much percentage of stocks versus cash you want to hold in your portfolio and rebalance that periodically. Basically, let's say, for example, you hold $10,000 in your portfolio total, just as an easy number to understand. And let's say 60% of your portfolio is now in stocks and 40% of your portfolio is in cash. The last 2 or 3 years, the stock market has gone up dramatically, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60%. Now your portfolio is no longer 60% stocks and 40% cash, but it's now 80% stocks and 20% cash because the market has taken over. Your stocks have grown so much that the percentage of your stocks versus your total portfolio is much greater than it used to be. That would be a good time to rebalance your portfolio. In other words, what you're doing is you're taking some cash off the top. It's all profit now. It's house money. You're taking all the profit and you're putting it back into the cash pile. Warren Buffett, again, I go back to him. His statement and his quote is the following. He says, "Sell when everybody is enthusiastic and buy when there's blood on the streets." It's a simple statement of sell high, buy low. Again, timing that is almost impossible, but if you keep that portfolio balance of percentages in check for yourself, for your own portfolio, not what everybody else is doing, not what the next millionaire next door is doing or a billionaire in Bel Air is doing, what you're doing, what your portfolio is doing, whether it's $1,000, $10,000, or $100, it doesn't matter. Rebalance the portfolio once every year, twice a year. Do it consistently, and you're gonna be just fine. You'll be perfect.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. I know the stock market is like a very good tool to really get wealthy. And most people always get confused and always still get confused, about learning about it. Did you read any book about everything you've learned about the stock market, and what kind of books do you think people could read?
So I've read many books on investing, and I've done a lot of research as well. There is one book that I read early on, and I forget the actual name of it, but one of the founders of Vanguard, the company, the mutual fund company, one of the biggest ones in the United States. His name was John Bogle. I'm not sure if he's still alive or not, but he was one of the founders of Vanguard, if not the founder of Vanguard. I think he started the index fund historically. I think that's who started the index funding situation. He wrote a book on investing, and I would probably start there. If people want to start learning about investing, they can look up John Bogle and some of the books he's written on investing. That would be a great place to start. Of course, any and every book that has either been written by Warren Buffett or about Warren Buffett, I would start with that as well. Very powerful basic investing principles are in those books. And what I would say to everyone who's starting their journey, before you dive into the market, before you get really aggressive with picking stocks. That's not important. What's important is learn the basic rules of the game. You don't want to go, and start cutting the wrong forest. You want to cut the right forest, if you will, right? You want to learn the proper rules, the proper way to invest. And these books will give you investment knowledge and philosophy that will not fail, ever. It doesn't matter what market you're in, whether in a bear market or a bull market, like we're in right now. Those books, it's like the foundation of everything that I do and everything that I try to emulate is from those books. And it's impossible to discuss all that in a podcast, but that's the place to start, is to get as much reading and as much knowledge from really, really smart people who have done it and who have shown that the system works. Start there, and then start your own journey with that. And one of the biggest things that I can tell people is have skin in the game, which means start investing. It's okay if you lose some money. It's okay if you make some bad decisions. I've made some really bad decisions. I've lost some significant money on some bad investment decisions. Everybody will. But you got to start, and you got to start that journey, and you got to do it as soon as you learn the rules.
Awesome. Yeah. So my next question is, how do you stay disciplined during volatility when the market, is like red and everyone is like, what?
It's when you look at the portfolio and everything is red and you just lost $2,000 on paper, or $20,000 or $200,000 on paper, you're like, oh my God, what do? I want to sell, I want to get out. The reason why most people don't make any money in the stock market is because of emotions. Mm-hmm. Human emotion eliminates profit in the stock market. Mm-hmm. Because what typically people do is when they see their $10,000 portfolio turn into a $7,000 portfolio in 1 week or in 1 day, which can happen, mm-hmm. they panic and they sell. Now they've realized their losses, mm-hmm. and this is exactly what Warren Buffett would not do. What he would do is he would take his $1 trillion of cash that's sitting in his account, and he would actually buy certain stocks and certain funds that are on sale. So going back to what he always says, you buy when there's blood on the streets, when it's all red, and you sell when it's all green and people are super enthusiastic. A little bit at a time. You don't jump in with everything you got. Put in a little bit, you sell a little bit, you buy a little bit. So when the market is down, it's very hard to do. It's counterintuitive, but it has to be done to make money. You buy. When the market is going up, like it is doing now, you sell a little bit of the profits. That's exactly what I'm doing in my portfolio. I'm selling a little bit to rebalance my portfolio. The market has been going up for the last, and I'm not talking about up for 1 day or up for 1 month. I'm looking at 6 months to a year to a 2-year time periods. I'm not looking at what happened yesterday, what happened today. I don't care what happened yesterday. I don't care what happened today. I care about what happened to my portfolio 6 months ago. Uh-huh. I care what happened a year ago, 5 years ago. Did I make money on my initial seed capital, or did I lose money? And if I made money, I'm going to take a little bit of profit, and I'm going to keep doing that. And that's how you discipline yourself not to panic when the market corrects. The market naturally is going to go up and down. The market never goes straight up. There's going to be periods of downtrends. There's going to be periods of flat trends. There's going to be periods of uptrends like we have now. We have a big bull market going on for the last 10 years. And so the key is not to panic. Hold tight. And I believe John Bogle said, stay the course. That's the man who invented the index fund.
Yeah.
That's the man who made lots of people very wealthy in this country. Yeah. That's who you listen to. People who have made money doing the right thing at the right time. But the last thing you want to do is panic. If you panic and sell during the wrong time, you're not going to make any money.
So, my next question is, how do you manage risk? For someone who, I know risk for someone who is like 20 is different from risk for someone who is 50. So how do you manage
It's a
risk?
great example. I'm going to use my children and myself as a perfect example. So I have a 7-year-old daughter who is in first grade. I have a 19-year-old son who's studying at a university on the East Coast. He's in Hoboken, New Jersey, and studying engineering and artificial intelligence. And he and I talk a lot about investing and risk and what to do. Risk for my daughter, who's 7, risk for my son, who's 19, and risk for me, who's 60 years old, who's nearing retirement and kind of end of his season of his career as an eye surgeon, is extremely different. So for my daughter, I have a portfolio set up for her. She's 7 years old, and I have about $8,000 to $10,000 of money put away for her. 90% of her portfolio is in stocks. Why? Because she's not going to need that money for another 30, 40, 50 years. Now, interestingly enough, I'm going to go back to our discussion that we had about compound interest and give you a perfect example of what happens to her portfolio right now. So currently, she has about $8,000 to $10,000 in her portfolio. If we do nothing else, if I don't put a single penny into her portfolio right now, and when she's 65 years old, she would be worth close to $1 million just on that money from compound interest. Because why? It seems like nothing. 8,000 doesn't seem like a lot. But when she's 65, we've had 60 years of compounding. She's now worth over $1 million. Now that $1 million is not going to be worth as much as it is today, but it's still a big amount of money.
Yeah.
Now, if we add more money to her portfolio, it's going to be even bigger. Again, time in the market. That's the key. For my son, he's 19. Again, I told him, and we decided that 80% in stocks, 20% in cash is an appropriate portfolio for him. Because why? We want growth. We want him to continue experiencing that growth in the market. And we want the 20% to take advantage of when the market does correct 10, 15, 20, 30%. We have some gunpowder, we have some ammunition to buy some stocks at a discount. We can buy Amazon, we can buy Google, we can buy NVIDIA perhaps at a discount. Funny story about my son, I gotta digress a little bit. He was 12 years old, he was building a supercomputer upstairs in my house, and we bought a video card for his computer from NVIDIA. This was 7 years ago. And he said, Dad, and he was I think 12 years old, he goes, Dad, as he's building this computer and he's putting the card in, he goes, you know, you should buy some stock in NVIDIA. They make the best video cards. I said, what is NVIDIA? I've never heard of them. He goes, no, Dad, just go buy some NVIDIA stock. And so I listened to him, my 12-year-old. I bought some NVIDIA stock, and now that NVIDIA stock is paying for his college education.
Wow. Because
it has grown out of control. Now that's a lucky story. Now not every company does that, but yeah, we bought NVIDIA at like $20 a share or something, and now it's went up 10, 15, 20 times. Crazy. So yeah, it's paid for a lot of his college education. So a 12-year-old gave me a nice tip. So that's his allocation. Now to get back to me, my portfolio allocation is going to be very different than his because I'm looking to retire 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, right? Or slow down at least. I need to pull some of that money that I've been working so hard at making and saving. I need to live on that because my income is dropping, right? So my allocation is going to be less aggressive, which means I'm going to make less of a percentage, but I also am going to reduce my potential drops in my portfolio. In other words, if tomorrow the market drops 10, 15, 20%, and I need some cash to pay my mortgage or to buy some groceries or to go on a vacation, I can't afford to realize that 20, 30% loss. That'd be too much. So I'm going to keep 30, 40% of my money in cash and bonds, which are not volatile, as we discussed. They don't go up and down so fast. I don't make as much interest on that, but I also don't drop as bad as some of my stocks. I'm going to keep 60% in stocks. Why? Because I still want the growth. I still want that compound interest. Stocks always give you more return for your money than cash and bonds do. But they also come with more risk. I've had some stocks that I bought that have dropped 90%. I've had some stocks that have gone up 300%. So you're gonna, my money market, my bonds don't go up 90%. They don't drop 30%. They give me 4 or 5%.
Yeah.
That's it. But it's not gonna drop 80% or 90. I'm not gonna lose $800 on my $1,000 investment. That's important. And it goes back to, when do you need your money? How old are you? What's your time horizon? Those are all things that people can do with their financial planner, with their accountant, or on their own. But they have to do that every single time they rebalance their portfolio. Because every family, every person is different, right? My situation is very different than my neighbors or yours. We all are individuals, but we have one common thread, and that's compound interest.
Yeah. Yeah. One as we wrap up, one question I want to ask is IPOs, right? How do you take advantage of IPOs? Are they like investments you also pay attention to?
So IPOs let's back up for a second. Every single company that's in the S&P 500 right now had an IPO.
Yeah.
Amazon had an IPO. Google had an IPO. NVIDIA had an IPO, right? The problem is not with IPOs. The problem is, which one do you pick? There is 200, 300, 500 of them potentially every year that come out. Which IPO, and a lot of them will go bankrupt. A lot of them will go under. The Amazons and the Googles are one in 1,000. How do you pick? How does a normal person like you and I, who's not on Wall Street, who doesn't have insider information, how do we pick the IPO? We don't. Fortunately for us, there's a mutual fund called IPO that buys IPOs, 100 of them, 200 of them, 300 of them, and invest in that. You want to do the IPO game? Go for it. I don't personally do IPOs. I don't have the time, the energy to do the research. I'm not a Warren Buffett. I don't have the smarts and the knowledge of picking companies. I don't play the IPO game, but I will invest in an IPO mutual fund that has 200, 300 companies of IPOs in them. That way I spread my risk, and I don't have to do the research. I can sit at home and play my guitar or play with my kids.
That's nice. But you also have like beautiful set of guitar. This is very beautiful. And just to wrap up, what is one advice you will give to a young person, one who's just coming straight out of college, probably trying to go to med school or trying to go into the workforce, and is confused about investing, also confused about setting up their career. What's that one piece or two?
I have more than one piece. I'm going to try to make it super short. So we're coming to the end of our podcast here. What I have realized, which I wish I would have known 30 years ago, which I've realized much farther in my journey, is that no matter what your profession is, whether you're a doctor, a surgeon, an engineer, a mechanic, a bread maker, a housewife, it doesn't matter what you do. You can never, ever make the kind of money and create the kind of wealth that you can through the stock market by earning income. It's impossible, because we all have, you and I, 24 hours in a day, 7 days a week. We need time to sleep. We need time to eat. There's only so many hours we can work. It doesn't matter whether you make $1,000 an hour or $10 an hour. You cannot make that kind of money as you can in the market. So, with that knowledge and information, you have to say to yourself, how do I set up my lifestyle in such a way that I have money left over, so that as early as possible in my life, as soon as I start earning money, I start investing that money. And it doesn't matter how much. This is the key. It can be $1, it can be 100, it can be 1,000, it can be 10,000. But it's important. It's for you, your own situation. If you have $1, invest that $1. If you have $10, invest the $10. Do it as early as possible. Do it as quickly as possible, and do it in a way that you're not trading in and out. You just put that money and forget it ever existed. That's the and if you do that, my true belief, everybody that does that can become a millionaire by the time they're in their 50s and 60s in the United States. This is one of the best countries to do that in because our capital markets outpace everything that's out there in the world. The United States.
So thank you, Dr. Kagan. You've really shared amazing things, for us today. And I want to say thank you for coming to the Open Table Cup podcast, to
My
share
pleasure. Yeah, it's
amazing
awesome.
things. Hopefully, we'll do a round two because I know definitely people will have questions.
For sure, would love to do round two whenever you're in Los Angeles.
Yes.
Stop by, always welcome.
So, yes. So, thank you everyone for watching the Open Table podcast. I know you've enjoyed this session today. If you want to ask questions, drop the questions in the comment section, and I'll be happy to answer. Or send your questions to Instagram or my email also under in the bio. I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Bye bye.